Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Tom Millamau here. Today we have a very special video featuring a very special guest. We have Fither.
What's up? I'm not that special, but I am here. What's up?
Indeed, he's very much here. Fither is a content creator. He makes Persona content, but not just Persona content. He does all sorts of video games like Danganronpa, anime, recently Hunipop 2, and a lot of other stuff. We also have another guest. He is a longtime friend of the channel and a longtime friend of mine. It is Right. Say hello.
Hello, guys.
Yeah, so he's a really smart guy. You know, he's one of those philosophical sort of thinky people. He also believes in sort of unnecessary cringe concepts such as free will and all that stuff, but we'll get into that later. And he's the guy who I basically call every week to argue about Maruki 2, and that's going to be the topic of this video. And keep in mind, this video is a two-parter. Part 1 will be here on this channel, and part 2 will be on Fither's channel, so be sure to go over to his channel and check it out there. Not only the part 2 of this video, but be sure to check out his other content. Really good stuff there. So, we're going to be talking about Maruki. I want to talk about our sort of initial impressions, how they evolved, what we think about him now, and general sort of thoughts about the third semester of Persona 5 Royal. I call it the Maruki section just because it's sort of all about him, and it is like, I think some of the best experiences in video games I've had in a really long time. For me, I think probably I've had a pretty interesting sort of experience with him. Basically, how it went is in my playthrough of Persona 5 Royal, very early on, I was spoiled about Maruki and how he was like the final boss, and his palace was like the final sort of thing you had to go through. And basically, throughout a very large amount of the game, I just hated him, and I thought, here's this guy, you know, I'm going to see him through counseling and all this, and I'm helping him with his research paper, and, you know, this guy's gonna become like the Yaldabaoth 2, you know, he's this evil guy, he's gonna sort of like take control over the world and all of our thoughts and all that, which I wasn't technically wrong about, per se, but I sort of had the context wrong. So, that was sort of my initial impressions going into it. They've grew quite a bit since then, and I think Maruki right now is one of my favorite characters in not even just Persona 5 Royal, but in like the Persona universe, I'd say. So that was my sort of initial experiences with him. Fither, I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah, so I had a pretty interesting kind of experience with Maruki too. I think from the get-go, like even before he was like revealed, I was very suspicious of the character. Just like knowing how Atlas is, they don't really introduce new characters for no reason, right? So I remember like immediately from that first Persona 5 Royal trailer, me and my friends Flair and Medi did a video where we were like, this guy is evil. And we strangely accurately predicted like more or less what the scheme was, but I didn't actually end up playing Royal until many months after the game came out. And I kind of just fell in love with him. Like I kind of agree with you. He's definitely one of my favorite like Persona characters. I'd say he's easily in the top like 5 now.
He'll sort of introduce as this sort of just like easygoing guy, and just because of the fact that he was sort of brought in like by Shujin and by Principal Kobakawa, I think, and just because he was associated with him and the whole like Kamoshida incident, I just thought he was a sleazebag from the beginning, just because, like, you know, Shujin can't do anything good. There's no way they actually care about anyone's mental health. I think even Ryuji mentioned that. But, you know, as the game sort of, like, develops and as it goes through, and it sort of proceeds, like, you sort of realize, like, yeah, this guy actually seems to care a little bit. And that's pretty rare when it comes to, like, Persona characters that you end up fighting, basically.
I think Persona 5 especially just instills an inherent like distrust of adults into you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's definitely has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, definitely. Right, you want to comment on that a little?
Yeah, no, I think generally from the onset, just the fact that they only introduced Kasumi and Dr. Maruki from the start, it was already inherently suspicious because you wouldn't assume like Kasumi would be the villain of the story unless they wanted to pull some twist like that. And so then your inherent assumption would be that, like, of course, Dr. Maruki should be the villain then. Like, why would they introduce him if they weren't going to do something like that, like with the first semester, if Yaldabaoth is gone? And so I guess from the onset, like, I already had my assumptions, like, oh, this guy is, like, you know, he's up to no good, and he's probably gonna go against us at some point. And like you guys, I see that like over time, like the more time you spend with him, you begin to question perhaps like whether he is really a bad guy, or whether like his actions throughout the story are like if there's some malicious intent behind all of it, like him talking to you, because like you assume that like, oh, he's getting all this information on you and he's gonna use it against you in the future, and he does in some capacity, but not in the malicious way I suspected he would.
Yeah, I was so sure that he was gonna use all that, like all the stuff that we said to him, in secrecy, and like he's gonna use that to like fuck with us somehow. I'm guessing it's a little bit too late to do a spoiler warning, but I think it stands to reason that you wouldn't be watching this video if you haven't finished Persona 5 Royal, I'd imagine. But yeah, spoiler alert, Maruki was right about everything, and his world would be much better than ours. But again, we'll get into that later. So funnily enough, when I was like roughly 70 hours into Persona 5 Royal, I took a very long break because I had already played Persona 5 like 4 times. I had like close to 400 hours in that game, and I just felt like I was playing the same game, but with this one character that shows up like once every palace or something like that. And I just felt like it wasn't really worth it, but I knew that, I had to fight Maruki, I had to go through his palace, so I just figured, I'm already this far into it, I might as well keep going. And towards the end, while I'm going through his palace, I lived like a week in his world roughly, and I sort of see like, oh, this is what, this is how the world would be like under Maruki's control. And I started thinking, like, what if that world were to be sort of like translated into our world? And like, what if what he did to the Persona world, he'd do like the same thing to our world? And I kept thinking about it. And after a long time of sort of weighing the different options, the conclusion that I arrived at was Maruki's world would be so much better than ours, and I felt so bad about trying to like change his heart and like destroying his palace that I didn't want to finish Persona 5 Royal. I just straight up said like, I'm doing something wrong by going through his palace, and it actually straight up prevented me from like proceeding in the actual game. Eventually I sucked it up, and I honestly didn't feel like Joker and the Persona and like the Phantom Thieves, on this like heroic mission. I felt like Hitler and the Nazis going to destroy everyone's happiness. Like I'm killing Haru's dad, I'm killing Futaba's mom, and I just felt terrible about it. I don't know. Did you guys feel like sort of similar in that regard?
I would say there definitely was at least that feeling of like hesitation about if you're the good guys or not. And I feel like that's something that was definitely missing in the original kind of narrative of Persona 5, is this like gray wondering of like, are we doing the right thing? Like they pull the thing like when it comes to the Phantom Thieves about, oh, are we doing the right thing by changing people's hearts? But it's like, yeah, like you are. But so I feel like Maruki being in this area where like you genuinely do second guess yourself about if this is the right thing to do. I think that's a really like cool part of the story.
Yeah, when I was like facing off against Yeld about the God of Control, I didn't really feel very conflicted. But when I was up against Maruki and like Azathoth and like all that sort of kind of was a little bit, I'd say a little bit harder and more of a moral dilemma. Right, you wanna touch on that?
Yeah, no, I think personally when it comes to Yaldabaoth, he seems to be very inhuman, and I think that plays a lot to how we perceive him specifically. Like, if Maruki were to speak like that, I think it would be just a bit different because he's a human like us and he has experienced different pains and different experiences like we have, unlike Yaldabaoth, who's some like weird godly figure who's like, oh, I know what's best for humanity, and then you're like, oh, okay, God, like, that's cool and all. So I think, yeah, like for me personally, when it comes to Maruki and the whole morality thing, I did find it very interesting that they decided to delve into the more like gray area. Like now we're like beyond good and evil. Like, is this like justified or not? And like for a game to make you question a lot of things like that, when throughout the rest of the game it's like kind of pretty self-evident, oh, we're the good guys here. I really do like that a lot, how they implemented that into Persona 5 Royal with the third semester.
Yeah, just the contrast of like, okay, first up, you're up against a sexual predator, right? Second, you're up against this like sort of super greedy art teacher who just fucked over all of his students. And then, mafia boss, and then it was Sais after that, right? or no, it was Futaba. You know, you're helping Futaba and you're rescuing her from all of her like sort of regrets and pain and all that. The super greedy CEO who, you know, doesn't give a shit about really his daughter all that much and all that stuff. Then Sai, who's, you know, like doesn't really well cares about justice, but like is so dead set on winning no matter what that like you don't really feel bad about that. Then you're up against like Shido, who's like probably the worst of them all, and he's like he wants to just, you know, like take the country over for control. And then the literal god of control, and the final boss being like your counselor, like that sort of hits a little different in a lot of ways. And just the contrast of that of like Maruki, like your school counselor, and the dude who you helped like write a research paper, as opposed to like all these like sort of almost like cartoonish villain people, was hit me pretty hard to say the least. And now like I don't know if I mentioned this in the channel, but I'm actually studying psychology now, like in college. And you know, whenever like I'm like studying, I'm just putting on Gentle Madman, and I just feel like I'm Maruki. You know, I just get in the zone. So
That's slightly concerning.
I'd say a little bit, but it fits the theme so well, and it's such a banger too. You know.
It is.
Yeah, good Palace favorite.
Yeah, it's also the Palace was just like I think, which it's close between Sai's Palace and Maruki's Palace, but I think probably Maruki's is my new favorite. I think.
Personally, I still stick with Sai's Palace. I don't know. I think I personally like the aesthetic and of course the song, the Winds of Fate. It's a big banger. But Maruki's Palace was interesting. I really did like the second portion to it, the Eden Paradise version. There's a lot I can say about that, but I'll save that for later when we discuss more specific.
Yeah, that was definitely really cool. So here's something I want all of us to answer. Just like, and we can start with Fither here. Let's say Maruki's world is granted, right? And you know, Mementos overrides our reality, blah blah blah. In the real world, what would one of your wishes that would be granted be?
So circle back to me. I gotta think about that one.
You're good. Right, you need more time, or
yeah, you're putting me in the spot there, Tom.
Okay. I'll if you want, I can sort of like go on, and then you guys hopefully will have something. For me,
it's a bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you can speak.
Okay. I think probably I would be dropped out of college, and my YouTube channel would have 1 million subscribers. I'd say for a start. This is one. I would have a Tesla. I would be living in an extremely nice house. Okay, man, that's a little bit of a stretch, but definitely, I would be pursuing my dream doing YouTube, and my channel will be wildly successful for a start. So I don't know. Does that sort of give you guys some ideas?
Sounds very materialistic.
Oh,
not that that's bad or anything. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, no, it's a bit of a tough question to answer because, like, of course, like when somebody ever asks you, like, what's the thing you most want? It's like, well, you know, there's a lot of things I want, but if I were to pick one, which would it be? And I don't know, like, for me, like, I think it's like a pursuance of like maybe like I've always been very into music, and like to be like a successful musician would always be my dream.
Gotcha. I got one more.
Yeah.
All right, so hear me out. Mono Alo from Hololive, not retired. No such thing as Hololive antis. And yeah, that be definitely another big one for me. Fither, you got anything?
See, I feel like I don't have any kind of like grand tragedy in my life that I would want to like, you know, stop. Like, I don't have any dead relatives or anything, so I think I do also kind of tend towards the materialistic, where I'm just like, yeah, fuck it, make me a multimillionaire, Maruki. Sounds good to me.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, no, like honestly, like if you haven't gone for like that many grand hardships, I guess like there really isn't much you can say. Of course, everybody goes for their own hardships, but to the extremity like Maruki or the characters we see in Persona 5, I don't think or maybe you guys have gone for something like that.
I also would have bought 10,000 shares of GameStop before the big
Oh, me fucking too, dude.
Oh god.
Man. All right, anyway.
I got a better idea. Go back to 2010, buy like 1 million bitcoins, and there.
Oh yeah.
Made a great
We're just
right there.
super rich.
Invent Bitcoin.
Invent Bitcoin, literally.
Bitcoin. It's Satoshi. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to also go on sort of like a list of things we can all probably agree on in regards to Maruki. So I'll just start like listing a few, because that'll sort of like lay the groundwork for the debate that we'll have in part 2. I think we'd all probably agree that Maruki had good intentions going into it. I think he legitimately, like, even though, like, a kid... Yeah, no, you said?
About good intentions.
We're already
boy.
off to a bad
All right.
start. It's agreement
I
list.
will say this. I will say this, so I don't want to elaborate too much, but I will say that initially when he acquired his persona with Rumi during that whole scene, I think yes, but I think once we get to like perhaps Sumere or like a bit before that, I think that's when it falls off like completely.
Okay. I guess
Personally.
we can sort of talk more about that for the debate.
But to simplify it, from the very onset, I think yes, he did have good intentions.
Okay, so let me rephrase by starting off, he had good intentions. That's something we could all agree on. I think
I can
he
agree with that.
legitimately wanted I think his only real desire was just wanting people to not have pain, right? I don't think he really had any other like secondary agendas. We're good on that?
For now, yes.
Great. All right, Fither, you're good on that, right?
I would say his ultimate goal is aversion of pain, an aversion towards pain, and that includes his own.
Okay.
So it's not entirely selfless.
Yeah, I guess
that's what I was like trying. I didn't want to talk about it there, but like I think you got it right, Fither. We're like, I think some people have the impression that like he's completely selfless, while in reality, like this was all brought upon because of his relationship and tragedy with Rumi and her parents, and he kind of wants that, as we see from Eden and stuff like that.
Okay. I think probably another thing we should also try to establish is like how Maruki's power actually works if we're gonna have like a really like in-depth like discussion or debate on this, because it's like kind of foggy just by nature of like it's a game and like obviously, you know, it doesn't really matter like logistically that much, but I kind of want to just like define or establish like what his abilities are like he's capable of. So it seems to me like he can read minds just because of like how many changes he made to people who he never really interacted with.
I think
Right?
his mind reading is a sub effect of what he's doing in Mementos.
Okay,
I don't think
Yeah.
that's an innate thing he can do.
right.
No, he clearly is not omniscient or omnipotent like Yaldabaoth would be. He clearly is like attaching himself to mementos in order to gain like a general cognition and perception of the individuals he's trying to treat. I think
So he
that's what he's trying.
may or may not know like very like specific details, but he knows like a general like gist of like
Yeah,
people's
he has
desires.
a pretty good sense of what's going on, but he's not like all knowing.
Yeah. Okay, I'd say that's probably about right. And this is sort of like a pretty difficult like question. Goro Akechi, Wakaba Ishiki, and Okumura. They're alive in his cognitive world. Can he bring people back to life, basically? Like, are they real or were they sort of just like cognitions?
They are real creations of his. Real is subjective, but it like as far as we're concerned, they are actual living people.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I perceived it, I'm pretty sure what he does is like he creates a new reality separate from like the original reality, and that's why they're allowed to live the way they are. That's why like with Goro, if his whole reality were to collapse, he would just like be gone again, along with with Okumura and the others. So
Okay.
Yeah.
But like, just hypothetically, like, could he like bring back George Washington?
If somebody's fantasy was I really wish George Washington was my brother, then I don't see why he wouldn't be able to.
Okay, I feel like that sort of creates some problems because I feel like we all want like someone from like who died like a really long time ago to be alive now, you know?
It doesn't seem like time is really an issue for how like when the person died. It seems like he can kind of just pop them into existence regardless.
Yeah. Okay.
I think personally, like with him, the way he decides what he wants to bring into reality, it's mostly based on what the individual most wants. Like, yeah, like an individual might want like millions of things, but whatever that individual like, whatever brings them the greatest amount of happiness is what he will bring into reality. Because like I
Okay.
assume then like everybody would want like billions of dollars, and if that's the case, then I guess like I don't know what would happen in that case. But yeah, like I'm pretty sure like based on the way I perceive it or the way I see it, he seems to only be bringing like the thing that would make somebody the most happy.
I'm changing my old answer then. I want Bob Ross brought back to life.
Oh, Ross, that's a good decision.
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay, well, I guess sort of it's probably more trouble than it's worth to sort of like discuss how that would work, because there would be a lot of people who are dead now that would probably be alive if, just hypothetically, if your one wish being bring this person back to life, then like I feel like a very large amount of the population would bring at least one person back. So I guess we can sort of like glance over that just for now. So I want to talk about sort of just moving on from that. Like I think one of the cool things about Maruki was how like he sort of actually implemented psychology in a way that is pretty faithful to like the study as a whole. Like again, I mentioned I'm a psychology student. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly good one, but I definitely am. And I think one of the cooler things is like the sort of in his confidant, he talks about, would you rather have this bucket of 10 cookies or just like this one cookie right here? And he basically says, if you chose a one cookie, it's going to taste a lot better for you because your cognition. And he talks about scarcity and that. So I thought that was pretty cool. I want to talk about a little bit about during the palace, there were 3 sort of thought exercises that he proposed. And I'm going to need you guys' help on this one because I'm a little bit foggy on it. I do remember the first one being basically your friend's being attacked. You have 2 options. You have to either like stand there and help him and like you yourself probably getting beat up, or run and get like a teacher or something, I think, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Something
that's
like
correct.
that.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I remember the third question is having the ability to change hearts, but do you guys remember what the second question was?
I don't.
I don't recall either.
Could probably try to look it up real quick.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the question I had, or the sort of discussion I wanted to have was on the third question anyways, so I guess we can just ignore the second question. I'm sure someone in the comments can sort of say what that was. So the third question being, you have the power to steal hearts. What do you do with it? One of them was sort of steal anything you want. Second one was, I'm gonna get the order wrong, but steal your own heart. Steal evil hearts to reform society. Do nothing, or steal the heart of the person you love, or something like that, right? I think I had those right. And the ultimate answer, or Maruki's sort of ideal answer, was steal the hearts of society, right? I think that probably says something about Maruki, the fact that he sort of came up with like the same answer as the Phantom Thieves did. Because for me personally, I originally thought that his ideal answer would be, steal your own heart just to avoid pain. I don't know if you guys have any sort of thoughts about that, about like how his sort of end goal kind of is fairly aligned with what the Phantom Thieves is, and how that sort of like plays thematically.
Yeah, I first of all think that those puzzles are just super fascinating. The idea of like solving a puzzle from the perspective of somebody else is just so cool for like getting into the head of a certain character. So I thought that was really neat. But yeah, Maruki's like heart stealing is really interesting, because I think at some point he says like your justice is like stealing the hearts of evil, and his is like getting rid of desire in general. So there's just this really interesting kind of conflict between the two of like, what is best for society? Is it better to like get rid of the bad elements of society, or just say, you know what, no more bad ever? So I think that's just kind of cool.
Yeah, no, with Maruki specifically with those puzzles, you can clearly see there's like a very huge parallel between the methods they want to exact, both with the Phantom Thieves and himself. And so yeah, I found it very fascinating how like they both want to kind of similarly do the same thing, but their methods and the way they approach it is very different. One's like a complete elimination of the issue, while one's trying to reform the issue to like a better image.
I think it's just hilarious how Ryuji actually got it right, like immediately. Kind of on accident, but Akechi just like dunks on him anyway, just calls him an idiot. But, don't sleep on your boy, that's what I'm saying. Also, here's another thing that really, really has been sort of a big question mark, at least in my mind, about Maruki. So, why didn't Maruki actualize Rumi's parents back to life. Do we have any thoughts on that? Like, is that like a plot hole, or does that sort of say something about like Maruki?
Maybe it was a work in progress. Maruki honestly probably got so caught up in like, well, actually, I think what he actually didn't he actualize her? I think he already got her with the actualization.
Yeah, he removed the memories, I think.
Like forgot about what happened.
Yeah, no, it was clearly like an example of his very utilitarianist view on the way he wants to like resolve these situations. Like I'm pretty sure that what they were trying to say was like the only way he could resolve the situation was to like lose his happiness in order to make her happy, you know? And it can't coexist. I'm pretty sure that's what they're trying to say with that whole event. So I'm pretty sure that he's sacrificing Rumi in order for all of this to happen.
I don't know. I just feel like if he wants to minimize the amount of pain, he would just minimize his own pain of losing Rumi and Rumi's pain of having her parents killed, you know?
I don't think that's the case. I think Maruki specifically he seems to be acting in a way where unfortunately some people will still face some pain because he's trying to maximize happiness. My apologies. Maximize happiness among the greatest
Anti-Mark, trying to maximize pain.
Yeah, maximize pain. Yeah, no. He's trying to maximize happiness to the greatest amount of people, right? And if that requires some people to not be happy, it would be to the cost benefit of everybody, of course. Like, yeah, like he's gonna take one for the team, right? Like he's not gonna be happy, but like let's just say through that act, millions of other people are happy. I'm pretty sure he'd be like, yeah, that's a good decision. So I'm pretty sure that's like what he's doing with this.
Basically, that criminal killing Rumi's parents was very happy about it, and in order to maximize happiness, they're still dead, and the criminal's still very much happy about it.
I don't know about that. Maybe like, I don't know, like with Maruki.
Yeah, what happens when he gets to that guy on the like happiness list? He's like, a guy who killed Rumi's parents.
You know, you get like a lollipop and just all sorts of nice things.
I don't know.
I mean, I feel like Maruki just under principle would probably be like, I mean, I guess you count, you know? You're a person. Yeah. I find that very difficult. Or I would have found
Yeah, I think it brings into
difficult if I was in
question
his
mostly like
position.
whether Maruki himself, like as a human and the way he perceives the world, like may affect his judgment specifically. Like, of course, like what would happen when Rumi's parents' killer rolls up, like on the list? Like, he would assume, yeah, he would like be like, well, I guess you're gonna take one for the team now. But you know, it's like it's very interesting to think like what would happen. You know, how would his previous experience like cloud his judgment specifically when he makes these decisions of who gets to be happy and who doesn't get to be happy?
You know, I just got a train of thought from that point, right? So, because there are some people whose very existence only serves to like create pain, right? Like I'm talking criminals, people who are just genuinely awful people, right? If we are sort of basing on this idea that he wants to just strictly minimize the amount of pain in the world, and because some people only cause pain through their existence, like would Maruki just straight up like light Yagami some people, like just straight up erase some criminals, like straight up Death Note style, just to minimize pain?
It seems like Maruki has the ability to also change people's personalities. Like the one teacher you have, what's his name? Ushio, I think.
I couldn't tell you.
You have this one teacher who's like the guy who's a huge asshole the whole time.
Oh yeah, she's not the math teacher, no.
I'm not sure what he is, but he ends up having this weird like change in personality where he's just like happy and he's kind of easygoing, and so it seems like Maruki can also just like make you a different person to some extent. So that might be what he ends up doing with criminals. It's just like, no, you are not rapist man anymore. You are happy.
I think, yeah, maybe it could be like just either that, or perhaps like maybe he changed the cognition of why the teacher was always so grumpy and angry all the time, and maybe change that so he's no longer angry anymore. Like, oh, maybe like he was always angry because like maybe his wife passed away or something like that, and maybe she's back to life, so he's no longer like angry all the time or something like that.
And we're sort of getting closer to like the titular sort of debate thing, but just a few more things to establish. I think that because Maruki, just by nature of like him wanting to sort of, you know, erase pain and do as much good for people as possible, right? It's he sort of reminds me of, like, imagine, I'm gonna sort of just bring this to an entirely different game altogether. Fallout New Vegas, right? He sort of reminds me of like a Mr. House, but he's like cares about people, sort of. Because Mr. House in that game, he's all like, you know, this is what I'm gonna do for all the progress of humanity, and it's like I'm objectively the best choice, and I have all this power, and nobody can sort of challenge it. But because I'm like a visionary, and you know, I made a lot of money, and I'm super smart and all that, you know, I'm clearly the correct choice. Marky sort of reminds me of that in Persona, where he's like, he's this all-powerful person, and he has really nothing to like limit the scope of what he could do besides like just his judgment. And because he thinks like, oh, you know, I'm qualified just because like, no, I'm a really good person or all this stuff. And I don't know, that was just sort of a comparison that I drew between him and like, I guess like another character from an entirely different franchise. I don't know if you're able to like liken him to anybody that you know, like in whether it be game or anime or anything like that.
Yeah, the Mr. House comparison is actually really apt. They are kind of similar. Like, I would say the major difference is Mr. House cares way too much about humanity, whereas Maruki is like hyper obsessed with individuals.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a character off the top of my head. I can't think of any off the top of my head to like what he does, like with that amount of power. Maybe like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of stuff from like Evangelion, but I guess like they share like very similar concepts. That's why I'm trying to think of something like that. But yeah, no, I guess like maybe with the further impact, that whole incident, I guess maybe Shinji in some way, with all that power, he did kind of like choose to save humanity, I guess. But yeah, no, I can't think of a great example off the top of my head.
I never watched Evangelion, so I'm just gonna wholeheartedly agree with whatever you just said. I guess again, I mentioned Light Yagami earlier. He's sort of like reverse Light Yagami, where instead of like killing people, he's just like changing people, that sort of way. Like a light Yagami, if you will. I want to end the discussion section on this note, and it's sort of getting into the philosophical side, and I want each part of the way on this. We can go sort of, I'll say me, I'll go Fither, and then Ray. The question, is pain necessary? That was like a very large motif in the Maruki section. That's kind of what his whole palace was about, sort of, or it was centered around the question, like, is pain necessary? And that's, you know, obviously the Phantom Thieves say, yes, you know, because it allows me to grow and allows everyone to sort of become stronger and all that stuff. And even if you don't experience pain, then, you know, you're never going to become a different person. That's kind of what a lot of the story arcs were based around, like Futaba, like her gaining strength to, you know, sort of face the world and all that. And really, I mean, every single character, you could say, like, you know, because of the pain they face, like Ryuji, because of like, you know, how he got his leg fucked and how like all the track team hates him, it's because that he was able to sort of develop as a person. But as for the question, is pain necessary? For me, in my opinion, if pain doesn't need to exist, then it really serves no purpose. If there can be a world without pain, and if there is a possibility where all pain can be eliminated, then you don't need to grow necessarily. Now, whether growing or not, like whether growing is like this objectively like, oh, you have to grow, it's this super good thing, you know, like it's necessary. That's sort of another question. But for me, it's like, I feel like the strength that you get from pain and overcoming pain, like that only really serves to help you overcome more pain, or for like when later on down the line you face, you know, even more problems, things like that, then you're, you know, more apt to deal with those. But I think if you're gonna ask me if pain is necessary, and if you could just remove all pain, would you do it? I'd say that it'd be a pretty obvious thing for me to just say yes. So, Fither, you wanna answer that? Is pain necessary?
I would say pain is necessary simply by the fact that it like exists. Obviously, when you're talking about a fantasy video game like Persona 5, there's solutions to this problem. Like the metaverse exists and actualization exists, but when it comes to reality, it kind of does, just because like we do not currently have the method by which to eliminate all pain, and it's kind of just an unfortunate like necessary evil of existence, is the fact that like things are not always going to be perfect and shit is going to suck, and like, you know, life is what it is. So I would say unfortunately it is necessary.
So I guess sort of just to like as an extra to that, if you were able to remove pain altogether, would you do it?
Hmm.
And if you don't really have an answer, we could sort of let that sort of boil, and then we can talk about it more in the part 2. If you want to
I feel like a world where you always get what you want all the time would be deeply uninteresting. And I'll say that's my answer for that.
Okay, I feel that. All right, is pain necessary?
I don't know how to answer this in a concise way, like Fither answered in a very concise way, but I think I'll delve more into it in our second part. But generally, yes, I am in agreement that pain seems to be necessary in a lot of ways, both in an evolutionary way, both in a biological way, and also, I think, in somewhat psychological way to overcome perhaps future hardships that might exist. And I think perhaps there's a lot to say about it, and a lot to say about like how happiness and goodness can exist without pain, and specifically other topics to address. But I don't want to delve too much into it. But in summary, I think pain, yes, is necessary in some capacity.
Okay, so I'm gonna scream at that guy in part 2, but I hope you enjoyed part 1, and I hope you watch part 2 on Fither's channel. Again, be sure to check him out. And we'll continue to the debate section of this little series we got going over there. So thanks for watching.